try this again. Okay, so what I did is I updated some of the values over here on the ship data. The ordnance used per second, weapon power used per second, power cap time in seconds, DPS of the whole DPS of the ship, the offensive score the AI thinks is how valuable the ship is, tech score, which is supposed to be the tech score, but I need to remove it because that's not the way it's actually used. It's for upgrading the ship, more or less, so when different weapons are the same type, they have a increasing tech score. So tech score 3 phaser is better than a tech score 1 phaser, and the AI can use that to figure out how to upgrade the ship. But so it doesn't really mean anything here. The original offensive score, this is the actual value the AI is going to use. The problem I'm having is I can't get these two to match. However, the modules are calculated in this version in the Shipyard is different from how they're calculated actually in the game. And I'm not sure why that is. I spent a couple hours trying to figure that out, and I couldn't get them to match. It's close. It's close, but it goes way off in certain circumstances. But in general, it's close. The plasma throwers throw it way off. I don't know why. It's rated much higher in here than it is in game. So then I updated these. I added this feature to the modules to show the offensive score. And this is actually split into two different pieces internally, which is the offensive score, which is just based on the damage the weapon does, and the defensive score, which is shield strength, health of the item, that sort of thing. And that will cause these numbers to change because the defensive score is affected by the size of the ship. A larger ship lowers down the effectiveness of a few hit points. The offensive score, the internal offensive score, is just damage. It doesn't care how big the weapon is or how big the ship is. So in that case, you can have fighters that are rated much higher than other fighters. I figure that these guns are already large, and the offensive score of those is going to be reduced by the size of the weapon. So if this weapon was 1 square, if the DPS of this weapon was just 1 square instead, this weapon is reduced, but just by how many there are. 1 square weapon. There's also an issue where the defensive score, I added a defensive score internally. Before it wasn't like that; it was just straight offense. But the health and shield of the weapon or item made much more different than the weapon ability of the item. So that there was very little variance between the weapons, except for the beam weapons, which were rated really high. So here, these weapons, or these items values will change depending on the size of the ship. So a capital ship, a fighter shield is very low, right? And same thing with the class 1 shield. It's based on the radius of the shield and the recharge rate of it. But on a fighter, these things are much more valuable. So I actually had to put in some limitations on how these work, because this shield here, ancient shield, is 599 points, and I believe there's a fighter that can fit 2 of these. And of course that because it's based on the size of the ship, that caused the fighter to be rated really, really high, and that was just because it had a whole bunch of defense, which it isn't a whole bunch of defense when actually in game. It's only 5,000 hit points, so it'll go away pretty quick. But the defensive rating of it was causing it to be rated much, much higher than what it should have been. So I had to artificially restrict this so that the defensive rating on a ship can't be any higher than twice its internal offensive rating. And that prevents it from having tanks running around. If it doesn't have any guns, then or has very few guns, you're not going to get very much out of the ship for this AI score. Yeah, so normally this would be like 1,000 points with this the guy on here, but just the 2 guns on there limits it to 25. Now the thing also here, you see this original offensive score. This isn't here because this ship is only in my save game. It's not actually in my saved ships, so it doesn't get loaded up with the game, so it can't calculate this value. It's only calculated in the shipyard for this save game. If I save it and reload the game, then it'll have a value there. Okay,